Samsara, Gnosis, Entropy, and the architecture of decay. There is a structure beneath everything. It does not announce itself loudly. It does not need to. It reveals itself slowly, through repetition, through exhaustion, through the quiet sameness of days, through the way every form eventually collapses, through the way every hunger returns. The ancient traditions called it samsara. The Gnostics called it captivity under archons. Physics calls it entropy. Different languages, the same machinery. Samsara is often presented as a spiritual cycle: birth, attachment, suffering, death, rebirth. But this description is too soft. Samsara is not poetry. Samsara is logistics. It is the operational logic of embodied existence. It is repetition under constraint. It is the requirement that something must always be spent so something else can briefly persist. It is the law that nothing is allowed to simply be. Everything must move. Everything must erode. Everything must pay rent in energy, attention, effort, and eventually flesh. Gnosis sharpens this perception. It does not merely acknowledge suffering. It suggests something far more disturbing, that the structure itself is misaligned. That reality is not simply imperfect, but architected in a way that fragments consciousness and binds it to processes it did not choose. The Gnostic myth speaks of a demiurge and archons, not primarily as monsters, but as administrators of a broken system, forces that maintain division, amnesia, craving, and repetition. Whether taken literally or symbolically, the insight is precise. Awareness appears embedded inside a machine that feeds on continuity. Schopenhauer arrived at the same conclusion without mythological language. He stripped away gods and cosmology and pointed directly at the engine. At the core of existence, he said, lies not reason, not meaning, not benevolence, but will. Not personal will, not conscious intention, a blind, impersonal, endlessly striving force, a pressure without goal, a drive that does not seek fulfillment, only continuation. This blind will objectifies itself as bodies, instincts, species, ecosystems, and historical processes. Individual beings are not primary. They are temporary expressions, expendable crystallizations of a momentum that does not care about their happiness. Desire arises. Desire is briefly satisfied. Satisfaction collapses into boredom. Boredom gives birth to new desire. Life oscillates between pain and emptiness. This is samsara in philosophical language. Entropy gives this intuition scientific form. Entropy is the irreversible drift toward disorder. Energy spreads, structures decay, stars exhaust their fuel, cells break down, mountains erode, memories fade, even the most stable arrangements dissolve. Life does not escape entropy. Life merely delays it by accelerating it elsewhere. This is the brutal symmetry at the heart of biology. To live, something else must die. To maintain form, another form must dissolve. To breathe, to eat, to survive is to participate in a chain of displacement. Every organism is both predator and future prey. Every body is temporarily stabilized matter, a brief pattern in a larger current of breakdown. Death is not an interruption of life. Death is woven into life at every scale. Cells die so organisms can exist. Organisms die so ecosystems can persist. Ecosystems collapse so geological cycles continue. Stars burn out so heavier elements can form. Nothing stands apart from this process. Decay is not failure. Decay is policy. And this pattern mirrors itself everywhere. It appears in nature. It appears in consciousness. It appears in human systems. Consider modern work. Most labor today is not creative transformation. It is maintenance of maintenance. Emails answered so more emails can arrive. Reports completed so new reports can replace them. Bills paid so bills can continue. Meetings held so more meetings can be scheduled. You work to survive. You survive to work. The loop has no culmination. There is no final moment where the system says enough. Only continuation. Even leisure is absorbed into this structure. Rest becomes preparation for productivity. Entertainment becomes recovery for performance. Sleep becomes fuel. Everything is metabolized by the cycle. This is samsara in fluorescent lighting. The same logic governs desire. Wanting arises from lack. Fulfillment briefly neutralizes lack. Then wanting returns. Pleasure is a momentary stabilization of tension. The psyche mirrors metabolism. Satisfaction is never permanent. Every achievement dissolves into the next requirement. You climb one hill only to discover another. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. The will does not aim at happiness. It aims at persistence. Sex is not intimacy, but replication. Ambition is not meaning, but momentum. Competition is the will colliding with itself through separate forms. Predation is the will consuming its own reflections. This is why emptiness pervades modern life. Not dramatic despair, not acute tragedy, something colder. Monotony, the quiet repetition of mornings. The sameness of commutes, the interchangeable weeks. The sense that time is passing without depth. People often mistake this emptiness for personal failure. They think they are unmotivated, depressed, broken. But the emptiness is structural. It emerges when consciousness recognizes repetition without meaning. And this is where boredom reveals its deeper significance. Boredom is not lack of stimulation. It is consciousness sensing mechanical repetition. It is awareness brushing against the architecture of the system. When boredom appears, it is not because nothing is happening. It is because the same thing is happening again, in slightly altered forms. The same conversations, the same obligations, the same ambitions, the same disappointments. Boredom arises when consciousness detects pattern without purpose. It is the moment awareness realizes that movement does not equal meaning. Animals do not experience boredom in this way. Machines do not experience it at all. Boredom belongs to reflective consciousness. In this sense, boredom has philosophical dignity. It is not weakness. It is perception. It is consciousness registering that it is embedded inside a repetitive mechanism. This is why boredom carries an undertone of despair that cannot be explained by circumstances alone. It is not about this job, this day, this room. It is about realizing that the pattern itself has no endpoint. And this is also where the illusion of progress enters. Modern civilization tells itself a comforting story, that technology advances, that medicine improves, that comfort increases, that life becomes better over time. But look closely. Technological progress does not reduce suffering. It reorganizes it. Medicine does not eliminate decay. It prolongs it. Comfort does not bring freedom. It multiplies dependency. Complexity does not bring stability. It increases fragility. Every new system requires maintenance. Every innovation introduces new vulnerabilities. Every convenience deepens reliance on infrastructures no individual controls. Civilization does not escape samsara. It industrializes it. Cities become biological loops with power grids. Economies become hunger cycles with spreadsheets. Digital networks become desire engines operating at planetary scale. Progress accelerates motion, but it does not change direction. People work longer lives in cleaner offices. They age more slowly, but they age. They die later, but they die. They distract themselves more efficiently. The underlying structure remains untouched. Civilization becomes samsara with infrastructure. What appears as advancement is often just refinement of the loop. More efficient production, more efficient consumption, more efficient distraction, more efficient survival. The system does not move toward resolution. It moves toward optimization. And optimization is not liberation. It is deeper entanglement. This is why modern emptiness feels different from ancient suffering. Pain once came from scarcity. Now it comes from saturation. The shelves are full. The screens are bright. The options are endless. And still something essential is missing, because abundance does not dissolve repetition. It only decorates it. This is where the myth of Sisyphus becomes painfully literal. Sisyphus does not suffer because the rock is heavy. He suffers because the movement has no resolution. He pushes. He reaches the summit. He watches the stone fall. And he begins again. This is not punishment. This is the shape of existence under blind will and entropy. Prometheus offers the complementary myth. He steals fire. He gives knowledge. He awakens consciousness. And for this, he is condemned to have his liver eaten every day, regenerating only so it can be consumed again. This is awareness bound to biological recurrence. Insight punished by embodiment. Knowledge chained to flesh. Both myths describe the same condition. Consciousness trapped inside repetition, forced to participate in processes that negate finality. The liver grows back. The rock rolls down. The hunger returns. The day repeats. This is not accidental symbolism. These myths emerge from deep intuition about the architecture of being. And behind all of this lies compulsion. No organism chooses hunger. No body chooses aging. No mind chooses forgetting. No star chooses collapse. These are not decisions. They are imposed parameters. Time itself enforces fragmentation. Memory decays. Identity shifts. Every attachment carries the certainty of loss. Even joy contains its expiration date. Entropy guarantees that nothing can remain. The cosmos does not rest, it consumes itself to persist. Matter organizes into life. Life organizes into struggle. Struggle organizes into hierarchy. Hierarchy organizes into conflict. Conflict reorganizes matter. The loop continues. Samsara is not only rebirth across lifetimes, it is rebirth within a single week. The same arguments reappear in relationships. The same ambitions resurface in careers. The same insecurities cycle through the psyche. The same hopes collapse and regenerate. Different faces, same script. This is why Gnostic thought feels so alien and yet so familiar. It dares to say what most traditions soften, that awareness does not belong to this system, that consciousness feels exiled inside biology, that there is a mismatch between the depth of inner experience and the brutality of outer process. Alienation is not a psychological glitch. It may be ontological. Whether archons are understood as literal entities or as symbolic descriptions of systemic forces, whether Schopenhauer's will is taken metaphysically or structurally, the meaning remains. Something blind drives the world. Something maintains the loop. Something ensures that new sentient beings continue to enter the cycle. Entropy explains decay. Biology explains predation. Psychology explains craving. Economics explains labor. Together, they form a total structure. Life feeds on life. Time feeds on form. Desire feeds on absence. Systems feed on participation. Everywhere, something must be sacrificed so something else can briefly endure. And even endurance is temporary. The universe offers no promise of resolution, only transformation through dissolution. This is the soil from which the longing for liberation grows. Not escapism, not fantasy, reaction to repetition. When everything that forms must decay, and everything that stabilizes must destabilize, the intuition of something beyond the cycle becomes unavoidable. Some call it nirvana, some call it the pleroma, some call it the absolute. Whatever the name, it does not represent improvement within samsara. It represents release from compulsion. Because the deepest horror of samsara is not pain. It is inevitability. You are born without consent. You age without permission. You hunger without choice. You die without negotiation. Even rebellion often feeds the machine. Resistance becomes identity. Identity becomes narrative. Narrative becomes participation. The loop absorbs everything. And yet something subtle happens when this structure is seen clearly. Recognition does not stop entropy. It does not halt biology. It does not abolish death. But it exposes the architecture. To see repetition as repetition is different from mistaking it for destiny. To recognize decay as structural rather than personal dissolves certain illusions. To understand craving as mechanical weakens its authority. Schopenhauer already understood this. Liberation cannot come from satisfying the will. No amount of pleasure, progress, or success can quiet it, because the will does not seek fulfillment. It seeks continuation. The only possible release lies in withdrawal from identification with desire, in stepping back from participation in blind momentum. This echoes Buddhist renunciation. It echoes Gnostic escape from the demiurgic realm. It echoes every tradition that points beyond becoming. Awareness cannot save the world, but it can reveal the cage. Samsara, Gnosis, entropy, decay, labor, hunger, death, these are not separate domains. They are expressions of one operating principle. Constrained repetition under irreversible dissolution. Once this is seen, it cannot be unseen. The remaining question is not whether the pattern exists. It is whether consciousness was ever meant to remain bound to it. That question has echoed through myth, philosophy, and silence for thousands of years, and it is still unanswered.